last. Mine's the one that counts right now, so we will call the meeting to order. And Jennifer, are you acting as our minute taker or is Mel tonight?
I am.
Okay. If you would call the roll then, please.
Yes. Rubing.
Here.
Marcus.
Here.
Roloff. Here. Hankins.
Here.
McInnes.
Here.
Kuntz.
Here.
Pallarito.
Here.
And Mason.
Here.
All right. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. It's not evening yet. It's just dark enough outside that it makes me think it's evening. Good late afternoon to everyone. Glad you're here. Let me say Merry Christmas to you because I won't see some of you between now and then. Review and approval of our meeting minutes from November 1st, 2022. I have a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve the amended minutes.
Okay.
Have a second sheet.
Scott Jarris was, I think it's.
Okay, so first of all, it was moved by Commissioner Roloff, seconded by, I think, by Mr. Marcus. By Mr. Marcus. Now you grew a face thing too, and I'm not used to seeing you guys like that. Mr. Rubin, you have a question, sir?
Yeah, maybe a correction. First, the first motion, approval of the October 4 Board of Health meeting minutes. Says Jarris Rubin made a motion to approve the October 4, 2022. I think it should say minutes as amended after that, because it says correcting, but it doesn't say what I made a motion to approve. You see what I'm saying? I think if it said to approve the October 4, 2022 minutes as amended.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
And then comma.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. Are there any further corrections or amendments to the November 1st meeting minutes? Hearing none, we do have a motion, and I believe Commissioner Marcus was in support. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you. Jennifer, roll call, please.
Roloff.
Yes.
Hankins.
Yes.
McInnes.
Yep.
Kuntz.
Yes.
Pallarito.
Yes.
Mason.
Yes.
Rubing.
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Now review and approval of this evening's agenda.
So move.
Moved by.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Jennifer, we can have the roll call.
Absolutely. McInnes.
Yes.
Kuntz.
Yes.
Pallarito.
Yes.
Mason.
Yes.
Rubing.
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Hankins.
Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. For public comment, I have two people on our list. The rules for our public comment are posted with our agenda. Having said that, Mary Martincheck, you are first on our list. You can state your name and where you reside, then
Sure.
Mr. Pallarito will be timing you, okay?
Okay, sure. My name is Mary Martincheck, and I'm an Emmett County resident. I have attended several Board of Health meetings in the past year and would like to take this opportunity to thank those of you who are leaving the board at the end of this year. I hope your time spent learning about public health has been valuable to you and the residents of your counties. I have listened to many, many public comments over the past year, some positive, some not so positive. I have heard many knowledgeable Health Department of Northwest Michigan staff members share their personal expertise with you, their professional expertise with you. My comments tonight include my hope that as you exit the Board of Health, you take the program and service knowledge you have acquired and share it with residents of your respective counties. The Family Health Director report this month shared incredible stories of families receiving specific personal support and assistance to meet the needs of children. There may be families in your counties who could benefit from these services, and I encourage you to continue to ask questions to help those people that you know in your counties. This agency and employees are well respected in the state of Michigan. It takes strong leadership and staff commitment, along with Board of Health support, to maintain the respect and leadership of a public health entity. One last reminder, the health department mission is to serve our entire community and to achieve health equity by promoting well-being, preventing disease, and protecting the environment through partnerships, innovation, and excellence in public health practice. I support the mission of Health Department of Northwest Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Colbita.
My name is Brenda Colbita. I live in Emmett County. Tonight, I would like to address the issue of adverse COVID vaccine side effects in our 4-county area. Drug makers have begun studies of the long-term impact of their mRNA COVID-19 vaccines to determine if there is a link between vaccines and myocarditis and pericarditis. Myocarditis is an inflammation of the heart muscle. Pericarditis is an inflammation of the lining of the heart. Both conditions are serious and can adversely affect the health and life expectancy of the person suffering from this condition. A study done by the American College of Cardiology found that there is an elevated risk of heart issues within 3 weeks of the second dose of the COVID vaccine. Researchers found that the incidence of myocarditis within 21 days of the second dose was 35.6 cases per million. Prior to COVID-19 vaccines, in 2018, the incidence of myocarditis in the general population was around 2 per million people. Both studies noted that young men were at the highest risk of developing myocarditis after receiving the vaccine. At the last meeting of this board, a member of the public spoke and pointed out that this health department does not require COVID vaccines, instead recommends them. In light of that recommendation, I am asking the following question. Has this health department compiled local data on the incidence of adverse cardiac events? How many people have suffered adverse effects, including myocarditis, pericarditis, blood clots, and other things following the administration of their COVID vaccines and the boosters? These adverse effects are happening here in our area. I have spoken to many medical professionals who have seen them firsthand. These COVID-19 vaccines do not prevent the transmission of COVID-19. Young, healthy men are not at high risk of death from COVID. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm asking this board to direct Dr. Meyerson to publish this data on the health department's website. In closing, I would like to thank the board for their service, especially the commissioners who are leaving. For those of you remaining on this board, I will see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colbita. Any other members of the public that would like to address the Board of Health? Any other members of the public who would like to address the Board of Health? All right, we will close public comment. Next, Ms. Thompson.
Am I on? Perfect. So I have the privilege tonight to present a retiree or a soon-to-be retiree from the health department. For any of you that came to our all-staff celebration last week, you got to see just how valuable our staff are and what a great team. And we really get to excited when we get to celebrate with someone when it's their time to retire. So I've asked Joy Klooster actually came with us. She's sitting right there in the back. And Joy has been with our agency for 12 years and is retiring at the end of December. And we are so grateful for all of your dedication and service. And I would like to read her retirement resolution, if I may.
Please do.
In an official session on December 6, 2022, the following resolution was unanimously approved by the Health Department of Northwest Michigan Board of Health. Whereas Joy Klooster has provided 12 years of service at the Health Department of Northwest Michigan, is a public health nurse, providing services to hundreds of people, improving and promoting health as well as preventing disease, while also providing leadership for multiple staff, other local health departments, and community providers as a coordinator of programs such as our breast and cervical cancer control program and navigation, Wise Woman, tobacco prevention, and community connections. Whereas Joy's professional nursing practice has truly exemplified Lillian Wald's vision of nurses as guardians of the public's health, as she's embodied the heart and soul of public health nursing and fueled her commitment to providing education, health screening, and coaching, counseling, immunizations, and ensuring access to healthcare for all through smooth coordination of resources between multiple community partners. Whereas Joy's experience as a nursing administrator provided an important foundation for her ability to plan and implement new programs such as the tobacco prevention program, helping many people to quit the use of tobacco, and the colorectal screening program, allowing for the detection of many early cancers, as well as her skilled guidance through dramatic program changes, such as the addition of navigation services to the BC3NP program. All of this evidenced by multiple successful accreditation reviews with commendations. Whereas Joy's kind and respectful and non-judgmental approach with every person who entered the health department was always evident as she listened well and utilized all resources available to resolve a concern. And her belief in the importance of health equity empowered her to advocate on behalf of women seeking services to garner them access to needed health services, medical care, and health coaching, no matter their life circumstance. Whereas Joy applied her extensive knowledge of the breast and cervical cancer control and navigation program across the region in 7 counties, so that any woman facing an actual or potential cancer diagnosis received the support and resources they need, including diagnostic testing and treatment through the Medicaid Treatment Act, all the while providing guidance, reassurance, advocacy, and answers to their questions, guaranteeing these women would feel support throughout their journey. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Health commends Joy Klooster for her service and dedication, and on behalf of the department, its employees, and the people it serves, indicates its appreciation and says thank you. And be it further resolved that the Board of Health extends best wishes to Joy Klooster for a long and happy retirement.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Joy. I've signed that resolution, and Nate and I spoke. He said his honey-do list is short, but he is switching over to dairy cows, so you'll need to cover the 4 a.m. Sir.
Just had a question in a second where it has the very first sentence. Is that reference to her as a professional in the practice of nursing or having a separate practice? Yes. Okay, it just kind of caught me off guard there when I read that because it made it sound like it was she's got a practice that she's provided these services, and that's why I wanted to clarify before I did it. And then the other one, I'm kind of fighting with whether or not we should be having a resolution that points to somebody else's writings that I don't know anything about. Whoever Lillian Wald's vision is, whether it was a well-known practice or not, I have no idea who that is. I don't feel comfortable doing any type of resolution, giving support to something I don't know nothing about. So unless someone can be very clear as to who, what, why, where, and why it's in here, it'd be very helpful for me to feel better about it. So it's not like a book of how-tos, it's more like someone's legacy. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I think we need to vote on this resolution. So I would take a motion to approve this resolution. Moved by Commissioner Roloff.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Pallarito. Any further discussion?
I just want to say I really appreciate you reading that motion. When I read it, I was impressed. And I thought she is an exemplar of the health department. I went to your program last week, and as I saw the people in there, I see what you are a part of. And I really appreciate you saying out loud what what this resolution says.
Thank you, Charlie. I've known Joy and her family for several years, and I can tell you that Joy is nursing is in her blood, and she really truly strives to make people's lives better. So unfortunately, she's going to go on to greener pastures, no pun intended. All right. We have a motion and a second. Jennifer, can we have a roll call, please?
Pallarito,
Yes.
Mason.
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Coons.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. And thanks, Amanda, for reading that in and preparing that document. We appreciate it. January Board of Health meeting. Several of you will not be here. So in discussion with, I think in discussion with Dan and in discussion with a few other members, because of the timing of things, typically we meet on the first Tuesday of the month. January, we will not have had organizational meetings at our own county levels yet to know who exactly is going to be here. And some of you have chosen to retire from your public service with your boards. And so my thought is that we would not have a regular Board of Health meeting in January. However, we need to have, and I'm probably covering both items 7 and 8 here. We need to have some type of representation here to vote on paying the bills, because the bills still need to get paid regardless of who is here. So I throw that out to you for conversation. I think Commissioner Rubing, Commissioner Kuntz, myself, and Mr. Mason are going to be here next month, but I don't know. There may be some movements among your own county boards that we may not be here. So while we have this board, we have a duly elected voting board of health at this time. I'm going to ask that this board would authorize the 4 of us to meet in January. I think, is it typically January 15th, Dan?
Yeah. Yeah, it's typically January 15th, and it's been done, remotely. It's a conversation. I think it's been done also where I'm looking at Shannon remotely, and then also depending on the members. And it's a short meeting.
It's about a 15-minute phone call to discuss materials are emailed out previous and a review, and then questions are asked, and it's generally a consensus approval of what's presented.
Right. We're just meeting to pay the bills.
Right.
I mean,
That's very, the only thing you have to do is you have to take notes so you can tell Jairus at the next meeting what you did.
Correct. Or how big
Jairus
the
is
bill
probably
was.
going to be one of the 4.
Yeah, so there you go.
So, Mel, are you taking copious notes on this? Because you're gonna be in charge of that meeting. Well, sort of.
But the date you said was a Sunday. You said 15th?
Oh,
So it'd be like the day after.
If it's
like
a Sunday, then it falls on to Monday.
It's on,
Okay.
yeah, it's on the
16.
16th.
that's Shirley's birthday, and she's not gonna care about what we do anyway.
I'll care.
You'll care. Okay. All right. So what I would ask this board, Jairus, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things. So for 4 of us to get together isn't a quorum. So any 4 of us could get together at any time for any reason. So you don't need board approval for that. However, if you're doing business, it probably makes sense to have approval. Secondly, our bylaws state that the Board of Health shall have meetings monthly.
Right.
So would this qualify for having a meeting?
Well,
Because we don't want to be in violation of our bylaws.
correct, but that's why we're having this conversation. I would also point out that if it's the four of us, Mr. Kuntz, Mr. Rubing, myself, and Mr. Mason, each of the four counties is then represented as well. So essentially, well, it would not be a full Board of Health meeting because of the timing. Some of you may not have committee assignments until beyond the middle part of the month. We're talking about Monday, January 16th of 23. So I understand your concerns about whether or not we have a meeting, but we won't know who to have at that meeting. Mr. Kuntz.
Might be a leap of faith at this point, assume that the four of us are going to be here, because we haven't been appointed yet. I
Right.
wonder if it's possible for us now to approve payment of January bills up to a certain amount or something. I don't know. Can we approve tonight payment of December and January bills?
No, I don't think we can without
having
review, without having reviewed them. Yeah. Sir.
We will have ours on what date is land on probably Monday after. We will have appointed all committees. Is that fifth person allowed to be here? 50?
It'll be just a phone call though, but it will,
Well, if you go to 5, then you're going to.
but you need the rest of the counties involved too.
If Mr. McInnes makes a valid point, if we have 5 members, then we would have to post it
Quorum.
as a public meeting because we would have a quorum. Okay. Yeah. So,
Why don't you do this, Scott? Why don't you schedule the 16th and post it as a public meeting? And if 4 are able to participate, they can approve the bills. If you have more, you can make it into a meeting. That would give you the flexibility to do either.
You post it as a public meeting, then it'll have to be in person because you can't do it, wouldn't be able to
That's
do it
right.
over the phone.
That's right. That's where it gets more.
Because it's just a review of the checkbook register and
Yeah, it is a 15-minute meeting.
Charlevoix County, I believe, on Wednesday, the 11th, is going to have its first meeting, which will be our organizational meeting as well. So we should have our appointments by then. Hopefully we will.
And it's January 3.
That was January 3. Henry, when did you say yours?
It'll be immediately following. It'll probably be the 3rd.
Okay. And how about Antrim?
The 5th is the first board meeting.
Okay,
But
so
the
well,
appointments aren't made at that meeting.
I know they're made a week, usually a week later. So more than likely we'll have it done before that meeting.
if we were to set the January meeting on the 16th, with that,
I don't mind coming here for a meeting, if it's even 15 minutes. I mean, I know it's a drive for Emmett and Otsego, but at least we posted it and we made a good faith effort to have a meeting.
Presentation day.
I've never overviewed the bills before. I wouldn't mind at the first meeting having Shannon or Dan go over in person with how it's done.
It's pretty simple. I mean, there are three documents, but one of them has the 40 pages that are materials that I'm going to look for the finance person that are where you can see specific topics. It's not a bad thing for this group to do. And if you have looked at them in advance, they have it laid out so clearly. The reason the meeting takes 15 minutes is because we can usually read and comprehend precisely what they have there. It wouldn't hurt, I think Jairus points out, put them on the screen.
okay, so are we in agreement on the date, January 16th, Monday, January 16th? Now, let's talk about the time.
It's Martin Luther King Jr.
I'm sorry?
Martin Luther King.
It is.
so it's a holiday.
So it's probably a federal holiday then.
Yep.
Right. It is.
Well, Okay,
Does the health department work on federal holidays or not?
We work on that one.
Okay.
just stuck my earpiece in my cake. But it's very good. Thank you,
Say, it's
whoever,
good.
thanks to whoever bought the cake, and thanks for putting it right in front of me, so I have nothing else to think about. Okay, how about Tuesday, January 17th? Does that create a conflict for anyone?
Shannon, what about getting the bills out? Normally we mail them on the 15th.
When,
Would that be? So,
And
they
Monday
won't
is
be mailed.
MLK Day, so they're not going to go out that day.
okay.
Tuesday, the 17th, I have a conflict. Well, depending on what time we talk about. I would propose, because of the time frame, the Monday being the federal holiday, so the post office isn't going to work then anyway. Tuesday, January 17th at 10 a.m. Matt, I know what your concern is right now.
I won't be able to.
I understand. I don't know. Emmett should have their other commissioner appointed at that point.
They will, because that'll be on the
Okay,
third.
so even if they need to sit in for you on that meeting. Tuesday, January 17th of 2023 at 10 a.m.
But the primary purpose of that meeting is just to.
is to pay the bills and to, I guess, depending on how many members are present. I don't know if we would have our organizational meeting at that time then too, so that in February we'd be ready to go.
Well, then you're going to want to have your whole board of health.
That's true.
Also gives them a chance to introduce each other, talk to each other, maybe give them some information, a soft meeting.
Okay. Board, we want to meet just to pay the bills, and then we'll have an organizational meeting in February. Go ahead.
What's been the procedure in the past? This isn't the first time this has happened.
It's not. And historically, I don't have a great answer for you right now, man.
We can answer that question, I think. So my understanding in the past, there was not a Board of Health meeting in January. There was just the bill pay. And then other activities in January occurred, like orientation for new Board of Health members. So that would be like a separate meeting once they were appointed. And that's something that we want to work on as well. But I believe just the bill pay was done, not a regular Board of Health meeting, and then also some orientation activities, which would be a separate meeting for new Board of Health members. And then just starting in February, first Tuesday of February, going with the Board of Health meeting. So
If you follow that, and if you just do bill pay in January, you will not have elected officers, so you will not have a chairperson of this board. So you'll have a committee of 4, but it won't have a committee chair. So it will be up to staff to simply lead the meeting, which is what you do at organizational meetings anyway.
Correct. The county clerk would lead the meeting
Yeah.
until we've had that. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so can we entertain a motion then to meet? Well, but if we meet in the morning, Mr. Coons won't be able to attend.
But if it's only bill pay, it only requires a committee, and it's not really even a committee, it's 4 people, but you won't be, I mean, if the motion said that the incumbent Board of Health members, yes, will meet on January 17 at 10 a.m. for the sole purpose of approving bills. I mean, they can't do anything else.
Right.
I guess you'd be okay, but then you got to decide, are you going to, you've got what, you've got 4 coming back, right? 1, 2, 4 coming back. So maybe.
Well, that's our conundrum. Okay, that's Mr. Thrill.
Can I just ask a question? Maybe this would solve it. Would there be a time on that day that you could call in? Because it's not a regular, it wouldn't be a regular meeting, right? So 3:30?
Then you could do a Zoom, and which is what we do.
Yep.
Okay, so
But I won't be offended if you have a 7-person meeting at 10 o'clock.
no, I would prefer, because I don't know that we'll have everybody properly assigned by their respective counties yet. So why don't we shoot for a 3:30 Zoom meeting on Tuesday, January 17th for the sole purpose of paying bills?
All right, well, let me propose this then. I move that, I'll just try this. I move that Jairus Rubing, Matt Kuntz, Scott Hankins, and Mr. Mason be designated to meet on Tuesday, January 17, 2023 at 3:30 p.m. via Zoom for the sole purpose of approving bills for payment. Now we've designated the people, we've empowered the people,
Right.
we've given the time and the place. It's a committee, but it's a one-time only committee, but we've designated those 4 people.
Right.
And so we could do that. I mean,
You have those 4 people you named, or someone else representing the county.
well, I think you ought to just go ahead and name them.
Yeah, I think because this is the board that's going to vote to approve that.
Okay, so and if one of those people are not on the Board of Health at that time.
Well, we have typically have met with just 3.
Yeah, I think we need 2 to approve the bills.
So
Okay.
if one's not
Because
there,
it's not a quorum.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's not a
Sound okay?
meeting, so you don't need a quorum. It's.
I'll support that motion.
Okay. So moved by Commissioner McInnes, supported by Commissioner Rubing. Any further discussion?
want me to state it again?
We just
or
want to
you-
make sure that we get the bills paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Okay. Jennifer, roll call, please.
Pallarito,
Yes.
Mason,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
Yes,
Coons.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we fixed the next one too, didn't we?
We did. We took care of both 7 and 8 there, or yeah,
Mhm.
7 and 8.
7.
Thank you. Which brings us to item 9, the health officer contract. I did forward. Jen, do you have a hard copy of that by chance with you? No?
You need
Okay.
one, Scott, or did you?
I do actually, if you. Thank you, Charlie. I'm gonna give these before I forget. Okay, so I think, I think I forwarded this contract to
Mhm.
everybody. Did everybody get a copy of the email that I sent to you? Okay. Basically discusses Mr. Thorell's. We need to do this in closed session, Dan, or would you like to do this in closed session?
I don't know that we can do it in closed session.
Yeah, I don't think,
Well,
we'd have to have an attorney and a written legal.
right, yeah, no,
Yeah,
you're right. And it's.
I was going to introduce him at the beginning of my report, but Matthew Cross from Plunkett Cooney is here and he's shaking his head. No, we don't do it in closed session. So.
Hi, Mr. Cross. How are you? Good. Okay. I saw you come in and I gave it one more round, but you missed out. So, Mr. Cross, would you just, by way of brief introduction, would you like to introduce yourself to the board? And please. Then we'll move on to covering this.
Everyone, we could talk offline too, so I'm not up here yakking while people are waiting, but my name is Matt Cross. I'll be your point of contact at Plunkett Cooney. I'm already working with Dan a little bit. I didn't recognize you, Dan. I emailed him, asked if he was here.
It's because I shaved the beard.
You shaved and you lost your glasses, so I was scrambling. So, but if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I'm sure we'll be working together. I know there's gonna be some turnover soon, but I think some of you will be working together pretty closely. So unless you guys have questions for me now, I'll sit down.
We need to cover his employment contract in open meeting, correct?
You do, yeah. We've already reviewed it, but yeah, the actual approval of it needs to be done in an open meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Cross. Okay, so if you have the employment contract in front of you, briefly, it discusses his duties, salary request, and there's 13 different items here. Dan, do you want to discuss any of this?
I'm good if everybody else is. I can, if you have questions about any of the items, I can certainly talk about them. I think, generally speaking, it was very similar to the last contract with a few tweaks here and there. I ran the last contract, with my attorney, and he said it's a good, general employment contract, and there was just really just a few things that were modified. So really, it's not that much different than maybe what you were used to with the previous health officer. Yeah, other than, there was changes with salary, and then there was one thing that was added to item C under 13 about just as separate employment beyond my duties here. If I had like outside employment rules regarding that, and then just specifying in there that that the health officer duties for Benzie Leona is through a contract with Health Department Northwest, and that is kind of outside of that. Item 13. So.
Okay. Jairus, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah. So that was one of my questions, actually. So right now you're working for them 2 days a week. Is that correct? Or how does that work?
Most weeks it's 1 day a week, but the contract specifies 1 to 1.5 days a week. So generally every Wednesday I'm in Benzie or Leelanau County working. And then of course, sometimes depending on what's going on, things, emails or whatever come across, but that's generally dedicated time, which is really specified in that contract that I will actually be there on site.
Right. So I guess my second question is, just so we all know, this is our contract between us and Dan, and we can do whatever we want with it, as long as Dan agrees to it. So I have a couple questions. I guess maybe for background, could you give me a little history, or maybe you're not the person to give me the history, but maybe you know anyone.
I'll try to answer.
One of the things the contract talks about is the salary difference between the health officer and the deputy health officer. And for one point in time, this organization had 2 deputy health officers. So I was just wondering if we normally have 2 deputy health officers. I think at one time we didn't have any deputy health officers. Are we required to have one? Can you give me a little background on that?
Yeah, as far as like when the deputy health officer, I think the organization has had a deputy health officer for quite some time. So Lisa Peacock last December posted for deputy health officer. Actually, Holly and I applied, and she decided that she was, kind of going back and forth and deciding at that time that her organization was big enough to have 2 deputy health officers, which some have 2, some have 3, some have 4, across the state. And so she offered it to both of us. And everybody knows, the events that happened after that, and it kind of worked out in that case, I guess. I think looking ahead, I don't know, we're going to have some organizational meetings, but, I don't know that we will have 2 deputy health officers, just given finances and budgets and things like that. More likely just 1. So I don't know if that
Yeah,
answers your
yeah, that
question,
does.
so.
And then I guess a follow-up question is, Benzie, do they have a deputy health officer?
They do not.
And if
We're
they-
actually, there was a classification, that position added to their classification schedule, and it's not a dedicated person. It would be like one of the directors would take on those duties and get, extra money basically for doing that. And you have to know that it's a much smaller organization. They have a total of 50 employees, and some of those are part-time.
And we have,
approximately 170.
okay. And that deputy health officer, you would be assigned to hire that, correct?
It would be one of the existing directors would basically take on extra duties
But
take on that
you
job.
would be,
Yes,
they would still be working with and answering to you, correct?
correct.
Okay. So if you read the contract, the other thing the contract talks about is the difference in pay between the health officer and the deputy health officer. And I think Dan's doing a good job. I think Holly's doing a good job. I don't know. I guess I have a slight problem with that, and here's why. So
Where are you reading that, Jared? Just so I know what to keep track.
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
Was,
Scott, you have.
I think it was not in the contract. I think it was in the
Letter.
communication from Dan's attorney, and which was forwarded to us by Plunkett and Cooney. So I think the salary request that is in Dan's proposed contract is part of what was in that letter, the negotiations between Plunkett and Cooney and I forget your attorney's name, Dean.
Jeff Jocks.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think that's where those things were addressed, Jared. It wasn't in the contract itself.
So that's prior to the contract then, to determine the compensation in the contract. So
Correct.
that's a separate precedent or preceding activity.
I guess I have a little bit of a problem with giving Dan a bigger raise than what we gave to all the rest of the employees. I realize he has more responsibility and he's got a lot to do, but I'll just give an example at my place. I think it was about 5 years ago. We had a good year, and some people were like, well, you had a good year. The people at the top, the owners, they make the profit. And the boss said, no, that's not how we do it here. How we do it here is every employee contributed to having a good year. And I'm going to look at how many hours they contributed, and they're going to get a portion of that paid to them bonus. So I feel better giving Dan the 3% that we gave everybody else than to give him, what is it, 5%?
I believe, yes. somewhere
I
in
don't
there.
have,
Yeah.
I didn't print it out. I thought it was.
I got it right here.
No, that it's not in the contract.
5% the following.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Rob.
It's 3% the first year and 5% the following 2 years.
Was that based on the scale of the range that we agreed upon for the position? I'm going by memory right now, so I don't.
Yeah, so this is outside of the health officer's salary is outside of the regular compensation schedule as far as that goes. And honestly, just to kind of go back, just talking about like the difference between, there was a very small difference between the deputy health officer and the health officer in salary, right? Like under $5,000. And the other part of this equation is that Benzie pays 30% of my salary. And I'm responsible for 2 health departments. I have 2 boards of health that I report to, 2 boards of health meetings, and sometimes a lot more than that. So, I mean, that kind of encompasses, I guess, the thinking behind this. And I want to be fair to everybody. I'm not, trying to not be, I guess. But I'm just, think about it, what makes sense. And I think there should be some more separation between the deputy health officer salary and the health officer, because otherwise why would you want to do it? Honestly,
Well, and to Dan's point, his year one request is just under 132,000. But he answers, like you said, to 2 separate boards of health. He's required to oversee 2 separate boards of health and 170 employees here and an additional 15 employees there.
50.
50, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So over 200 employees. That
I don't know what that was.
I'm just glad it wasn't only me hearing those voices in my head. I'm glad everybody else got
I didn't hear a thing.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I don't think the salary request that is before us is out of line with the responsibilities that we're placing there. Mr. Mason.
Yeah.
Clear up. These are 2 separate contracts. The one with Benzie Leland is not.
Benzie Leland contracts with us for his services, and they contribute 30% of his salary.
Okay.
So he doesn't have a separate contract with them. He has a contract with us. But they would pay 30% of the salary. And then we basically sell Dan's services to them for that 30% for a day and a half a week.
Yeah, and that's 30% of salary and fringe. So,
And I think for what it's worth, that if we use a percentage, that's not really reflective of what has happened in the last year. It's not a matter of us having a good year or a bad year. We had a horrific year. And Dan came in, stabilized things, worked with us. We are successful. He is successful. Staff is successful. I think it's demoralizing to spend much time talking about whether it should be 3 or 4%. I think we have a good contract with Dan, and I think we ought to call it good.
I would echo what you said. I don't think it's Jairus's point to demoralize. I
Right.
think Jairus wants just clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So are there, other than salary, are there any parts of this contract that the board has questions regarding?
Scott, I've got a couple of really tiny things.
Go ahead.
On the first page, termination, 4th line, 3rd line. However, the party wishing to terminate this contract shall provide the party, which I presume means the other party. I think there should be the word other in there. So like, otherwise the person's negotiating with himself. And I presume that was not the intention. To be the other party. And then severance pay, 2nd line, it shall pay to the employee as a lump sum of the employment's last day, which I presume means on the employee's last day. And I'm surprised, Jairus, you didn't catch this. And the last thing was, and there's no change required. It's just an observation. Performance review, an annual performance review will be conducted by the Board of Health's chairperson and the Personnel and Finance Committee, which is understandable. I presume that means, it doesn't need to say it, but I presume that's going to be an open meeting at which the health officer is going to request a closed session or something like that. But we don't need to say that in the contract. I guess this is just a fact. I mean, you
Right.
said who's going to do it, and the mechanics of how you do it is pretty straightforward.
right. And I think if it was done in the Personnel and Finance Committee, it's not even necessarily a
Yeah.
public meeting, right?
No, it had to be a public meeting, but it was your choice to make it a closed session.
But it was a full board.
It
At
was,
that time,
yeah, it was the full board, but you asked
Yes.
for a closed session.
which
so-
is allowed in the Open Meetings
Right.
Act, right?
That was one of the other things I was gonna mention. I forgot it until you.
Yeah,
I think that section should say an annual performance review conducted by the full board. He works for all of us, whether we're on the Personnel and Finance Committee or the Promotion and
Evaluation.
Program and evaluation.
Program and evaluation.
Is this just language from the previous?
Yeah, that language is carried over from the previous one.
Well,
but
I
we
think-
can, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. An annual performance review conducted by the full board.
And at that point, it's his decision whether to go, if he
Right.
requests us to go into closed session.
Right, but he has
Most
to
of the
say,
time They do, but that's his
Right.
choice.
so under, where was that anyway? Now I forget where it was.
Item number 7 under
Yeah.
performance review.
Okay, an annual performance review will be conducted by the Board of Health. Well, okay,
Board of Health.
strike the rest of it, conducted by the Board of Health,
Yeah,
period.
yep.
Okay, that's easy.
I want to tap our attorney for just a moment since he's here. Thank you, Mr. Cross, for your attendance now. Do any of these, it seems to me we have some minor verbiage changes in the contract. Is there any issue with getting a different, a corrected copy of this contract before this board? If we were to approve this contract tonight with those changes, is there any issue with if the board authorizes me to sign this contract with those changes, then can we take care of that in the next week or so? Okay. Okay. Just thank you. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music. If we vote to approve this contract, I'm going to sign the amended copy with those changes that that have been brought up. And I noticed that both Jennifer and Mel are taking copious notes, so they can provide those changes to you. Okay. Anything else, board? I'm going to go around the table real quick, or around the desks rather. Mr. Mason, any other changes that you would make to this contract? Thank you. Mr. Pallarito.
None.
Mr. Marcus. Mr. Rubin.
You know, the only other thing that,
I knew you were going to have something.
Should have went with him last.
yeah, 6 months severance pay. That's not unheard of in these contracts. We're looking at it for the county administrator in Antrim County right now. But it bothers me a little bit, I guess. I don't think if Dan would quit tomorrow, I don't think he's going to sit around for 6 months, because in the time that I've seen him, he doesn't strike me as a lazy guy.
Well,
So all I'm saying is he quits tomorrow, he gets 6 months and he goes and gets another job. I guess I struggle with that.
Understand, and I understand your concern there. But we're talking about a CEO type position. And there aren't any others in this particular, and there aren't any other local health officers in 4 counties that I can think of. That being Antrim, Emmett, Otsego, and Charlevoix. So my point is there are not many local health officers throughout the state. So if Dan or the board were to decide hypothetically that this isn't working out, Dan, see ya. Potentially to replace this employment could take him a significant amount of time. And I think we need to recognize not only the responsibilities that Dan will have if we approve this contract, but we need to be fair with him in what we offer as compensation. And I think that 6 months is part of that. I, in my own personal opinion, I think that 6 months is a fair offer on our part.
That was the only other thing that I had.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with him. Harris, I believe just because we're making a trend of this, we gave a very generous severance to President Administrator, who's doing a great job. I don't see him being severed, but somewhere this has to stop. This kind of, geez, what am I going to get for 6 months or 12 months? I do have a hard time with that. I didn't see the contract. Laptop.
Okay.
I did not see severance.
Okay.
And Scott, I will say that our county administrator, I'm on the subcommittee where we're doing his contract right now. And he basically said, if I quit, I'm going to find another job somewhere else. So if you make it 90 days, I'm not upset. So it sounds like we're going to make that one 90 days instead of 6, which is 3 months instead of 6 months, you know, but I guess I would feel better if it was 3 months, but Matt has a
Mr.
comment.
Coons.
I'd feel better if it was 6 months. The idea of the severance, I think, is to protect the employee in situations that arise. When you got somebody who's an employee at this level, and they're really that will employee, they don't have much job security. The severance is there to sort of replace what would normally be job security, maybe with another job. And I don't think it's unreasonable, or even if it's probably even be said to be industry standard or standard administrative job like this.
I would agree with you. I don't think it's out of line.
Or even unusual. I mean, it's just kind of.
Correct. Mr. Coons, do you have any other concerns with the
No, I'd
contract?
like to approve the contract as it is here with the proposals.
Okay, before we get there, Mr. McInnes, do you have any?
No, I'm fine. I mean, if I were the health officer, knowing that he's going to have 4 new faces in next year, I would want just a tiny bit of security to know that there's a speed bump that says, I'm not here for your entertainment. I'm here to do a job, and we all need to take it seriously. This is a reflection of that seriousness.
Thank you. Ms. Roloff, do you have any comments on the contract?
I think like these two.
Okay. Okay. Have I given ample opportunity for everyone to express any concerns that you have? I want to be fair. This is an open meeting, and I want to make sure that the board has had the opportunity to express itself. Hearing no further comment, I will entertain a motion to approve the health contract to make Mr. Thorell our permanent health officer and not acting in interim role. I will entertain the motion to approve this contract as presented. Moved by Mr. Kuntz.
I would say as amended.
Yeah, as amended.
Thank you. We did make some amendments there.
Right,
So
yeah.
yes, thank you, Jairus,
Items
as amended.
4, 5, and 7.
Matt, are you okay with that friendly amendment? Okay, that's what you intended. That's what I thought. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
I heard Shirley first.
Oh, take Shirley. No,
and
that's
it's her
great.
last meeting, so I'm taking Shirley's second.
That's great.
Okay, any further discussion? Jennifer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Rolla,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes.
Yes.
Kuntz,
Yes.
Colorado,
Yes.
Mason,
No.
Rubing,
No.
Marcus.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Congratulations, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Item number 10, staff reports.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome Amy Horstman to do a presentation on the Photo Voice Behavioral Health Project. And she has all the boards set up. I hope you get a chance to take a look at them, in the room before you leave tonight, but I'll let Amy begin. Thanks,
right.
Amy.
Thanks, Dan. I do have a PowerPoint, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. I'm going to also share sound. Well, while we're getting that figured out, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Amy Horstman. I'm a community health coordinator with the Health Department of Northwest Michigan. I'm also staff to the Northwest Community Health Innovation Region, or Shire. So if you're not familiar with what the Shire is, it's a cross-collaborative body that works to eliminate barriers around the social determinants of health at multiple levels. Thank you. And so the Northwest Shire covers 10 counties across Northwest Michigan, and behavioral health has been identified as a top priority need across that region for several years now. And so because of that need, the Shire launched something called the Behavioral Health Initiative, or BHI, in June of 2021. And within that initiative, there are 10 different action teams made up of cross-sector stakeholders. And those action teams work to make progress on one of two goals. The first being to enhance overall well-being and resiliency. And the second is to increase access to behavioral health services within the region. And so one of those action teams is made up of a group of high school aged youth who are from across multiple counties within the region. And I've been lucky enough to work with those youth and lead that group. And they've been working on a project to reduce the stigma around youth mental health. And so that's what I'm here today to talk to you about. So the project's purpose has really been to provide youth across the region with an opportunity to share their perspective on the issue of stigma around youth mental health. And so with that, they have also been given the opportunity to share some youth-driven recommendations on how that stigma can be reduced. And so in order to sort of work towards that purpose, the Youth Task Force facilitated what's called a Photo Voice project. And the title of that project was Through Our Eyes. And so if you're not familiar with what Photo Voice is, I know I wasn't before I started to work with this group. It's really a creative tool, sometimes used as a research method, that uses both photography and storytelling to really share a particular population's perspective on an issue. And so it's often used to encourage change at the community level and educate decision makers. So for the purpose of this project, the population we worked with was high school aged youth across the Shire's 10 county region. And the purpose of their project was to voice their perspective on the issue around the stigma. And so oftentimes with Photo Voice projects, participants are giving what are called framing questions. And those questions really act as a guide for the participants. And so we had a total of 10 participants, and each of them were given the same set of framing questions that you can see up on the screen. And so in order to answer these questions, the youth participants took photos and wrote short descriptions or stories of those photos to further inform their audience. So the three framing questions were: first, what does stigma around youth mental health look like? What is the impact of the stigma on youth? Second, what in your community or school increases the stigma around youth mental health? What decreases the stigma around youth mental health? And third, what actions can your school or community take to reduce the stigma around youth mental health? And so each of the participants submitted one photo per set of questions. So because we had 10 participants, we were able to collect 30 different photos with descriptions. And with several of the photos and descriptions that were submitted, we were able to create a physical exhibit. The project was funded by Rotary Charities, and the physical exhibit is on display here tonight against the wall over here. And a big goal with the physical exhibit was to be able to showcase it across the region, to share the youth perspective with as many people as possible. So we used the Behavioral Health Initiative Network as a way to do that. And I'm happy to say by May of 2023, the exhibit will have gone to each of the Shire's 10 counties and been available there for people to view. And of course, we're always looking for more people to sign up. And when I've done presentations like this in the past, I've sometimes have had a youth representative here with me who participated in the project or was a member of the Youth Task Force.
And unfortunately, that's not the case today. However, we were able to have a short video put together, and it showcases some of the youth who were a part of the first presentation for the Photo Voice Project at the Behavioral Health Initiatives Summit back in April. And several of them also sat on a youth-led panel where they were able to share more about their experience with the project. And so the video is just about 1.5 minutes long. So I'm going to go ahead and play it for you so that you can hear right from some of the youth who experienced this project.
In reality, mental health is a spectrum.
Mental health is messy.
Making others feel small and unworthy of attention can really hurt them.
Social media makes it especially easy to see the best moments in everyone's life and to hide the hardships we endure.
Basically, encouraging others to speak about their feelings and keeping ignorant comments to ourselves is a start to making everyone feel safe.
Because many people don't realize the truth and reality of teen and youth stress.
Providing youth with mental health education can be successful in reducing stigma, changing current attitudes, and can affect access to care.
My community is decreasing the stigma around mental health by having a wellness center in the school which provides a counselor for those who need it.
Even though youth may seem okay, they're very good at hiding what they're truly feeling on the inside. So what I would like the broader community to understand is how big this issue has become, because realizing that is the first step to fixing it.
And just doing a project like this, it's pretty inspiring to see that people are open to talking about this.
I'm thankful for this opportunity to see that this is happening with many other people and that I'm not alone in this.
All right, so if you're interested in watching the video again or would like to share it with others, you can download the video via one of the QR codes on the poster, which is part of the exhibit. And so a final thing I wanted to touch on was a document that the Youth Task Force created titled the Top 10 Recommendations to Reduce the Stigma Around Youth Mental Health. And this list came from the recommendations and insights shared through both the photo voice submissions as well as the discussion that was had on the youth panel that the youth were a part of at the Behavioral Health Initiative Summit. And so the list is available again through the QR codes that are on the poster. But as you read through the list, if you take a moment to look at that, you'll notice that some of the recommendations are worded to be specific to organizations or schools. But I think it's important to keep in mind that the recommendations can really be implemented in a variety of settings. And just to highlight some, they really emphasize the importance of creating safe spaces for youth in both schools and communities, normalizing the topic of mental health, and also the importance and value in self-care. So I'd like to thank you for your time and allowing me to present. I know that this project has been very inspiring to me. I am continuing to work with the Youth Task Force as they come up with additional project ideas. I know they're still very passionate about addressing the stigma. So I look forward to seeing what more comes out of that group. But thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Amy. Mr. Marcus.
There's obviously lots of uses for this project, but the purpose of it, we didn't quite get to, as far as the each individual's, I'll say, unprofessional view of how things should be done. I'm a little worried about presenting a findings to the public that hasn't been reviewed by professionals in an evidence-based practice style, rather than just some kid's opinion and going out there. It can be dangerous in many ways too, and misleading in some ways too. So I'm a little worried about the direction without that extra help of evaluating what was really being said and articulating in a more professional way, rather than the way they could be construed, and who knows what could be accepted by how it could be read. So I'm a little worried about that part. I think it's a good project for us to get information and know what's going through the minds of the youth, But to implement it at school levels right away and cheer kids, I don't think is the right way to go. I think with having mental health professionals really dive into what was being said, and then going from there is a better take. So that's all I have to say about that.
This is Jane.
Hi, Jane. Jane
Hi.
Sunmacher.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jane.
I just want to let
Jane Sunmacher. She's in charge of the Shire.
Okay, thanks.
I'm having trouble finding my screen. Anyway, I just want to let you all know that this project has been reviewed by behavioral health professionals. And as a matter of fact, there's community mental health organizations that have already requested it so that they can share it when they're having community events.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Yep.
Mr. Rubin.
I was just going to mention that when I walked around the room and looked at those pictures, the one that jumped out to me is the one that's right in the middle over there. And it's the teenager holding his cell phone. I was having a conversation not that long ago with a dad, and he said, my 2 kids in school are the only 2 kids in school that don't have a phone. And the kids with a phone are struggling because they're being influenced and called, in some instances, persecuted through social media. And the kids without a phone are being persecuted because they don't have a phone. Mm-hmm. So that just jumped out at me.
Social media is not always, in fact, probably more seldom is it a positive influence. Any other comments from the board?
That question.
Yes, sir.
I noticed you did not use the phrase mental illness, and I don't for a minute suspect that was by accident. And I have to presume it's a real challenge for children, young people, to disclose anything about what's going on inside their mind. Isn't that how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Thank you. And so I myself am not a mental health professional, but what I hear from the youth that I've worked with is that it is very difficult for them to feel like they can open up about what they experience with regards to their mental health. I think that they do experience a lot of stigma, both in their schools and in their social life. And so, I guess as, in my own profession, when I work with youth, I try to make it, known that I am a safe space for them to come to. And I think, it's important as just professionals to always keep in mind that we don't know what others are going through, and that we should, we would want to feel like we can open up to others. So we should be that safe space for them as well.
Anything else for Ms. Horstman? Mr. Mason?
Yes. Speaking to the cell phone issue, we have 5 children and all adult now. Unfortunately, I have a grandson who is really caught up in the video games and so on. And you see him acting this out. He's had his issues, very intelligent, but his issues are, I see that coming out of these video games. And even our 2 youngest who graduated 2015, 2013, 2015 did not have a cell phone in school. They survived it perhaps better then than now. I think it's worse now. The stigma that's being attached to. I think a lot of your mental health issues are arising from technology that's out there. That's my own observance. I'm not talking professional speaking. I think sometimes we have to observe these things. And it's a real thing. He'll just, out of nowhere, some emotional friend will pop up with him like a mushroom. And you can just see it's coming out of the videos.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, Mr. Thrill, let's go back to your report, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So number 2 in my report, document recording and fee for sanitary code Board of Appeals applications. And this is an action requested item. And just to go through this, at the last Board of Health meeting, there was discussion regarding recording final decisions for the Sanitary Board of Appeals with the Register of Deeds in each county. And we were given the task to go back and kind of research that, how exactly that would work. There are statutory fees for recording documents. And in this case, the fee would be $30. It's regardless of the number of pages. And so we figured out that part. And we just, looking at this issue to record all Sanitary Board of Appeals decisions effectively and fairly, whether they affirm or reverse health department decisions or grant or deny variance requests. We're proposing to collect a fee to pay for the recording of the document and offset staff time related to the appeal/variance request. And this is because the typical Board of Appeals request takes several hours of staff time to write the case summary. We have to attend site visit. We attend the hearing. And then in many cases, the hearings are not just done after that point. They tend to, and this has been the case in recent years, months, that they just kind of linger on because in a lot of the time it's because there's not enough information. And then we're, continuing to go back to the site. The applicant is going back. I mean, the boards are being very gracious, I think, or have been very gracious with the applicants, and not because they could simply say, we're done. You have to apply again. Sorry, you didn't come to the appeal with enough information. But anyways, I guess my point is that we spend a lot of time, a lot of staff time. And so I'm proposing that we would charge a fee of $300 on top of what they already pay to the counties for this Sanitary Board of Appeals fee to pay for Board of Appeals members' time and whatnot. This is a small amount, and it would also cover the recording fee and staff time to take the document down to the Register of Deeds to take care of that. It does not cover the costs, but it would just be something that, we can collect and offset some of it. So that's the action item on that. And just, we can swing back to that, but I also wanted to let you know that we have been working on a uniform application for appeals and variances that we can use in all the counties. And the whole idea of using this universal application is to kind of make it easier for the boards of appeals. It's going to get, force the applicant to fill out all the portions that they need to, ask for documentation when needed, and kind of steer them in the right direction. And then there's a section of the sanitary code that says an appeal is, if an appeal is incomplete, it is not ripe for decision by the Board of Appeals. And so what we want to do is ensure that anything going to the Board of Appeals is ripe for decision. So we're not wasting time. We're going there, we're being efficient. We have all the documents that the applicant needs. And then the board, to put them in a good position, because I've seen these cases, being involved with this, where they're not in a good position. It's hard to figure out where to go next because they don't have all the information. And I know Commissioner Hankins is, he's been involved with this scenario as well. So, so with that item right there, just kind of given that background, that is what we'd like the board to consider, is to allow us to charge a fee to cover the recording documents and also some staff time involved.
Let's address that right now, Dan, while it's fresh in everybody's mind.
Yes.
So, board, the request from the health department is for us to consider adding the $300 fee to our 2023 fee schedule, so that any decisions made by a Sanitary Board of Appeals would be permanently recorded with the deed for that particular piece of property. what has happened most recently, we had one in Charlotte County where the people bought a piece of property that had a pole barn on it. Through some investigation of their own, they found out that that pole barn bathroom drained to a 500-gallon tank, not to their septic system. And they kind of were shocked when they learned that. What this would do is record situations like that with the deed so that when somebody buys it, they know if there's been a sanitary board of appeals decision regarding the piece of property that they are purchasing. At first, Dan, I thought $300 seems like a lot of money, but I don't know how many, whoops, I'm throwing my pen. I don't know how many times we've been to the Walloon Lake piece of property where one of our board of appeals hearings has taken place. I think we've been there 3 times. That I've been there personally as part of the Board of Appeals. And I know your staff members have been there, and $300 doesn't cover all of their transportation and their time.
I don't think 3,000 probably would have covered that one, but
okay.
Just let me add something too, and I didn't, I was remiss. I wanted to put this in here and I didn't, and I apologize for that. But one of the concerns that came up regarding like charging a fee for that is that what if it's a true hardship, where somebody just, doesn't have resources and they're appealing a decision by the health department. We don't want to, put anybody in a bad position. So I would say we could even put on the fee schedule that, if there's a financial hardship that they could give us a simple letter stating, what the hardship is, and we could consider that. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marcus.
Well, he addressed one of my many concerns, and was the hardship it puts on people who are financially not in a position to be able to afford to do such a thing, which would stop them from appealing, which is not what we're here for.
I agree.
And I'm also thought about the possibilities of having that fee be in place if after the board, I'm just thinking out loud, they only pay it if they don't find the rule against them in the appeal process at the end. Then they pay that, I'm assuming. That's just one thought. Otherwise, it's ours to pay for and deal with it. The explanation you gave in regards to how this solves, I don't see that solution as part of this thing. I just see it as something that happens as a result of it. But this addresses every single applicant. It doesn't really address that particular issue directly. As a matter of fact, when I brought up in our Board of Commissioners meeting, I was actually challenged that this is not correct from our treasurer. So I think there's some flaws that we didn't see in this desire to attach something to a deed. I believe there's some laws that don't allow some of that stuff to happen, and I don't know. So
I did ask our attorney, Matt, to weigh in on that, and he did not see any issues with us with the health department recording something with deed. It's meant to inform.
I don't even know. I can't even argue. I just can just relay that my treasurer at the county challenged it and said there's other issues you can't do. So maybe Jairus remembers. And so basically, in my opinion of this whole fee is we've been how many years operating, and now suddenly we want to pay a fee, charge a fee because the prices are going up for everybody and everything, and suddenly we're going to pass it on to the people who feel like they've been done wrong. And I don't agree with that at all, actually. So whether the board chooses, I'm not in favor of passing on a fee to every applicant. Circumstantial issues, I guess, would have to come down to.
The applicant is causing the agency to incur a cost.
But it wouldn't have occurred to cost if something would. On the web. Oh, there's one more thing. I finished my sentence. My thought is you addressed making sure everybody was right to make sure every applicant had it. Isn't there a checklist now that you can hand them? Do this, do this, do this, and you'll be right. You'll be ready to go. I mean, why can't we provide a checklist of you need this materials for us to move forward? Sounds pretty simple.
Every county has been, it's been happening a little bit differently. So, I mean, I'm trying to correct that, I guess. You know, we're trying to correct that and make sure that that is the case, exactly what you're talking about.
Right, but
having
even
a
in
check.
our own county building department, we struggle with trying to get them to give people, you've been doing this for 20 years, you're a director of department, you're trying to tell, these people don't know what they're supposed to do. Give them a checklist of what they're supposed to do. Why can't we, I'm talking as if I was talking to my board building department, because it's very frustrating.
Yes.
When you have someone say they weren't told, they didn't know how to do this. Obviously, there's some due diligence on the applicant's part, but yet when there's a standard checklist of things that must be done, it should be given to them right off the get.
I totally agree. And there's a lot of legalese and things that happen with an appeal. You know, it's a little bit, you know, different because it has to meet certain conditions in the code. And we want to help people understand that and, you know, have the information that they need to go through the process and then let the Board of Appeals make the decision. I mean, that's really what it's about. Right.
You know, if you go to the next page.
Well, not necessarily passing that fee on to the applicant. The applicant wants the health department to provide the service, and you don't charge something for that cost that the health department has. You're really passing that cost to the taxpayer. You're asking the taxpayer to subsidize the fee. So I don't think it's unreasonable.
Well, I was going to say that if you look at the bullet, the top one on the next page there, we have actually had some serious issues in Emmett County, not all of which are addressed with this fee, but having to do with the process. And we are going to repair that with a better application form so that people understand what it takes to be successful in an appeal. We're also dealing with training of the Board of Appeals members because they don't understand what it is that they are, what their constraints are. And so we're addressing that. And quite frankly, I've spent enough time now, like an entire weekend, reading minutes and rules and everything else to say that, for which I don't get paid anything, but it was an example of how complex this issue is. So I think, first of all, the inspector came out and made a ruling, or that, you know, made a decision to deny something. If the individual accepts that ruling or that decision by the inspector, there's no cost in addition to be incurred. The only cost is the cost that's incurred if they want to appeal it. And the ones that I have seen here, I think, definitely warrant a $300 fee.
There is an application fee that's currently charged. Dan, help me with that. If somebody wants to appeal to the Sanitary Board of Appeals, there is currently a fee that's charged. What we're talking about is whether or not we charge for the decision to be attached to that deed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, it's that and trying to recover, you know, cover some of the health department's time as well. Because there is a fee that's charged that's passed on. Like we collect the fee at the health department. It's $175 for most counties. I think Emmett is higher. But that's passed on to whoever at the county is dealing with appeals. So in Charlevoix County, it's the clerk, right? So we pass that $175 onto them. We don't get, you know, any part of that. And I think that's for their administration of the Board of Appeals. And all I'm asking, I guess, or we're asking is that, you know, we can charge a fee that covers, number one, recording the decision with the deed, and then also just covering a small amount of our time.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rubing.
Yeah, Dan, can you give me a rough number of how many cases this would apply to in the last year? Just a rough number. I mean, how many in the 4 counties or in Antrim County, or or as a whole, whatever's easier. I'm sure you got some sort of a rough number in your mind.
Yeah, I do have a rough number, and I think we had a pretty busy year in 2021 in Charlevoix County, for
Charlevoix
instance.
County, I think we had 5.
Yeah, I think it might have even been more than that, but yeah. So I would say less than, more than 5, less than 10 on average. It's not a huge amount, because I mean, really people are appealing when they don't agree with our decision. And, we tried, our staff are very professional, very educated. So, I mean, we're a good health department. We have good staff. We're making good decisions, but sometimes people don't agree with it, and they do have the right to appeal. The code gives them that right. And, we want to accommodate that for sure.
Sure. I've never been on a board of appeals, so I'm trying to understand this a little bit. Let's say Charlie has 15 acres and he's owned it for 20 years and he decides he's never going to do anything with it, so he sells it to me. I buy it and I found out that 20 years ago, the health department made a decision that it couldn't have a septic field. It didn't perk, right? That's what they call that, right?
Right.
Charlie never did any work of building a house. He bought it. He thought he might do it, but he never went any further than that. He decided he wanted to live next to the airport instead. So I guess my question is there a way before I bought that property from Charlie that I could find out that there was a request or a permit that's sought from the health department and it was denied? Is there a way that I can find that out right now?
Yes, you can contact our office and ask for it.
So I can say Charlie's property number is X. I'm looking at this piece of property and I can call the health department and say, here's the property number. And you can tell me that in 2020 or 2000, 20 years ago, 22 years ago, there was a permit applied for a septic tank and it was rejected. Is that accurate? See what I'm asking?
Yes. Yeah, you can contact, anybody can contact us, and they do all the time for records on properties, right? Realtors contact us, homeowners contact us, contractors, septic pumpers, all kinds of people. So yeah, we could definitely, if we have the records, then.
Okay, so here's my second question. Let's say Charlie put this piece of property in real estate and I
put it in real estate?
Right.
What do you mean?
You listed it with a
listed it. Okay.
With a real estate agent.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I'm guessing real estate agents buy and sell property all the time. Is it common for them to say, hey, we've got 15 acres for sale, call up the health department, say, is there any problems with this property? Has anyone ever requested a septic permit or a well permit? Do they do that?
Yes.
So if I ask the real estate agent, it's really their responsibility to know that.
Well, it's, I mean, it's really the buyer's responsibility. And I think if you have a good realtor, they're going to give you that information for sure. They're going to do the legwork and get that information. What we've seen in this, crazy markets that we've been living in, past 3-4 years, is that property, there's 10 people lined up to buy a piece of property and nobody is doing inspections. Nobody's looking for records. And I think that is why we've had an uptick in Board of Appeal requests, because people will buy this because they got somebody right behind them that's going to buy it if they don't. And then they find out they can't do what they want, or they can't build on it, or can't build
they can't add 5 bedrooms.
They can't have 5 bedrooms or whatever. And we've seen that a lot. And this, by doing this, recording decisions with the deed, it would just be a way to maybe inform people, the public, better, I guess, and just to try to prevent some of these things from happening. It's not a silver bullet, for sure, but it's just something that we're considering that, could help the situation.
I understand.
This request was kind of generated by Charlevoix County, specifically by Chris Christensen, who is our board chair, but he's also a realtor. and he sits on our Board of Appeals as well. And to his credit, he said, hey, is there some way that we can record this stuff so that people do have one extra safeguard that here's your deed. Oh, by the way, there was a decision in 2000 that you can only have 3 bedrooms on this piece of property. So somebody doesn't buy it thinking, oh, we'll make it a bed and breakfast or an Airbnb and we'll add 5 bedrooms when you can't do that.
Right, but the problem is this information has already been entered once at the health department level. Now we're going to put it on the deed. If I don't ask as a buyer, if I don't ask the health department what the history is, and I don't ask the register of deeds what the deed says, I still don't know. So I understand the intent, but like Mr. Marcus alluded to earlier, I guess I think the background between our treasurer and our register of deeds thought was this still isn't going to help everybody when you've got 10 people lined up to buy a property. They aren't going to, if they aren't calling the health department to find out what the history is now, are they going to go through and read everything on the deed? Because we had a property in Antrim County that the county owns, and we found out the third time that I think our attorney looked at it, there's a deed restriction on this property. It was, there's quite a few documents associated with a piece of property, and it was further down, and it was only a couple paragraphs long, but there is a deed restriction. So,
okay.
I guess all I'm saying is I don't think this is going to be as positive as what we're hoping. That's just where I'm at, and I'm just one person. So
all I can tell you is that, you know, from my perspective, and I know, you know, from Scott's perspective, because we worked on a lot of these same appeals, you know, there is a lot of time and resources that are spent on these. And if there is a way to prevent that, and then we're just trying to make it better.
Yeah,
you know?
I understand that.
Mr. Mason.
Yes. Whatever happened when we have non-hurt, and so these places are saying, you know, there's no way. What happened to sand lifts and then raised beds?
Mm-hmm.
What stops those non-hurts from being able to improve, save a lot of this process? And then they're denied through the Board of Appeals. What's happened to those? I mean, still
we have those options in our sanitary code.
What stops you, like the individual over here in Charlevoix County, that is it too small a lot?
Too small a lot, or it doesn't meet this. I mean, because we've with alternative treatment, you know, having basically a treatment system attached to your septic system that polishes the wastewater before it goes into the ground, you know, typically in a mound. I mean, we've taken our isolation from the bottom of a drain field down to water table or clay, limiting layer, or whatever. We've dropped that quite a bit in our code. In fact, you only need a minimum of 12 inches for the property to be suitable. So we've addressed those in our code, but there are properties out there that can't meet that. You know, maybe they're 6 inches, maybe they're, you know, 2 inches.
Henry, almost every one of these sanitary Board of Appeals hearings deals with lakefront or riverfront properties.
Right.
Everyone that I've been to, anyway.
Right.
Except for Melrose Township.
Everyone is different, and there's, you know, different variables that have to do with, you know, why it doesn't meet the code at almost every single one. But they typically are, I would agree, you know, lakefront or something of that nature.
Anything else? Anything else, board? We've been asked to consider this. Specifically, it says the Board of Health is asked to consider adding this $300 fee to the Environmental Health 2023 fee schedule.
I'll move that the board authorize staff to adopt a $300 fee for each SCBOA application, in addition to the fee charged for SCBOA hearings. and that the fee be added to the environmental health 2023 fee schedule.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Kuntz, been moved by Mr. McInnes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Jennifer, we can have a roll call vote, please.
Roloff,
I knew I was going to be first. Oh, goodness. This is really, really tough. I'm sitting here trying to think, okay, now who's really interested in buying the property? Somebody that's got money. Number one.
You're in the voting mode now. We were supposed to have that discussion before.
Yes, they didn't give me a chance.
Yes, we did.
Well, don't say that.
He looked right at you.
I don't need egg over my face today. I want to go out on good terms with everybody. Anyway, it's a really tough decision to make. It really is. But I know what the health department has been putting up with year after year for all this that's been going on. And I know people out there do get talked into buying something. They think they can get in and get out with any trouble. I'll shut up and I'll just say, I'll vote for it. Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Hankins,
I want you to record everything that Shirley said in her phone.
duly noted. Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
Yes.
Kuntz,
Yes.
Valerito,
Yes.
Mason,
Yes.
Rubing,
No.
Marcus.
No.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay, just to hit on some of the, I know we're moving along here, so just to hit on some of the other bullets that I have here. Charlie mentioned, I think, you know, I don't know if we want to talk anymore about that, but
Well, I will just say that we uncovered a major issue in Emmett County regarding the training of Board of Appeals members who came in not having accepted the training that was put together by staff. And as a result, that was one of the reasons why they were unclear as to their role. Number two, unclear as to the requirements that the applicant must adhere to. And we are going to pass a resolution this month that stipulates that if you're going to be on the Board of Appeals, you must take training initially and annually, and understand you must adhere to the code, that we're going to adopt a set of an application form and another form that the Board of Appeals can use when making its decision. It's not enough to say we grant your appeal. We have to go through A, B, C, and D with documentation for all four. It's simply going to be more clarity for the applicant and more clarity for the Board of Appeals member, and everybody benefits by clarity, I believe. So and we, by the way, for what it's worth, we've incurred significant legal time working on this over the last week and a half or two. So.
and we really, you know, from the health department standpoint, we budgeted last year and had Jim Young, you know, design and build a training, which went, I thought, very well. And we recorded it so we could give it, you know, we could give it to the counties, the Sanitary Board of Appeals. We had it professionally recorded. And it, you know, they did a great job, and we can give it to whoever is going to serve on a Board of Appeals, and they can watch it and all the documents that go along with it and follow along. And, you know, our hope is that people will do that, and it'll be beneficial going forward. So
the meeting minutes were disturbing, and you've alluded to it in your notes here. And when the trooper pulls you over for speeding, you don't ask him to justify the speed limit. He is required to enforce it, and that's what your staff do. And so when individuals ask your staff to justify the sanitary code, which has been approved by all four counties, it gets to be a bit difficult.
yes, I agree. I think we've made a lot of great progress in Emmett County with this issue, and
I think it's unique to our county. I'm not criticizing any other county. From what I can gather, this is unique to us.
Well, I can say, you know, my involvement, yeah, it has been drastically different in the different counties. You know, Charlevoix County, in my opinion, they do an, you know, excellent job, you know, following the code and doing what they're supposed to do. And I've had, you know, different experiences in different counties, but, and I think Jeremy can probably attest to that as well. So anyways, long story short, I think we're making great progress. And
I don't think it's solving a problem anybody else has, but presuming that our resolution is passed in December 20 and it's going through second round of legal review, I would invite you to share it with the Board of Health. Other counties may find it useful.
Well, that's our intention, is we want to kind of make this more uniform for all the counties. I mean, we're all using the same code. There's no reason why we can't use the same framework for Board of Appeals. So,
I mean, one of the simple things, and I don't want to, well, I'm slowing you down. I apologize. This is my last meeting. I want to last forever.
Savor it, buddy.
I got somewhere else to be, Charlie.
One last thing. When what we're going to require in our resolution is that when an individual fills out the form to volunteer to be on the Board of Appeals, that stapled to that's going to be the resolution that says, here's what you're, you know, it's going to be in effect a contract. This is just come on and have a good job, good time. You're going to be making decisions, enforcing the code. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
yes. Yep. And just moving on really quick, just a little bit, this more lighthearted stuff, but in late summer, Toys for Tots reached out to the community in Gaylord, and they were looking for a place to hold their operations and store toys and whatnot. And one of our staff members came forward and said, hey, you know, we have this vacant space in our Gaylord office because we had the Otsego County Commission on Aging was housed there. They moved to a different location. We haven't filled that space. So we gladly, you know, said, yeah, well, you guys can use it. Happy to help out, and made that happen. And they were very grateful. And we have been working with them and our employees. We have public drop-off boxes at our office. And then during our annual staff meeting, we had the mobile unit there, and every employee was asked to bring a gift. And so we stuffed the bus and drove that over to the Gaylord office and unloaded it. And it was a huge amount of toys in that event, in the Stuff the Bus event. So they were extremely grateful. It put them over the hump. You know, they were extending their time frames and everything to try to get more toys for the families that they were trying to provide these gifts to. And they were very, very grateful, and just wanted to share that. It was, you know, really felt good to help them out. And then, of course, I'd like to just, you know, extend gratitude and thanks on behalf of the health department to the, well, I said 5 members, but maybe 4 members that are, well, I guess counting Julie, 5 members that have served and are not going to be on the board in this coming year. Shirley Roloff, Christian Marcus, Charlie McGinnis, Rob Palorito, and Julie Powers. Just really want to give you a heartfelt thanks. Appreciate the work that you've done on the board and your service. I know it's not easy, you know, being a public servant. I know from experience, and especially, you know, serving on boards and just giving back to the community. So just really appreciate that. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And then I also want to just highlight that, you know, Jennifer Kenny will be leaving the health department this month to seek a new adventure. She's leaving us, and she's been the face to the Board of Health for the past 8 years, and just has done an amazing job, and just brings a lot of energy and joy and just fun to the group. So just want to wish her well and wish her the best of luck in her new endeavor. Yes. And, you know, Melanie Bosman, I know you have met her today, and just, you know, very glad that she's stepping into the role, and I have no doubt it'll be a smooth transition, and we'll hit the ground running in 23. So.
Could I just say one thing real quick?
Absolutely.
Okay. I love the agency and everything they stand for. This was a very hard decision for me to make, because I feel like they're family and they're friends. But my husband looked at the checkbook and said, You can make new friends at another place. So, so apparently I'm making new friends, but it's been an amazing place to work. And I believe in everything. I believe in the leadership, and they do a fantastic job, and I will miss all of them. So it was a hard decision, but it was a great time for me and my family. So
I believe Jen could make friends anywhere. So yes,
Yeah.
I really do. So I don't think that'll be hard. That's all I have.
Thanks, Dan. We have a number of written reports that are submitted as well. And I believe those directors are here. Does anybody have any specific questions for any of the directors? Mr. Marcus.
Looking at the, from Holly Campbell, the Community Connections Program, which is a fantastic program in all our counties. But the data here is a little frustrating for me because the statistics that they're showing here paints a nice picture, but they're not that nice, because if you look at the denials by the state, they deny 18% of the claims are denied, and 75% of those, they don't even give a reason why they deny them. So it's pretty bad that there's such a true transparency issue at our federal government and state, requiring these health plans to provide data, transparencies, and reporting requirements. As we move forward with all these plans, hopefully are dead now in the Senate and House, they move even closer and put more of our mental health issues in these plans, these pre-played plans. We're going to see more and more of this. And we need to be more prudent into it, making sure that the transparencies that our local level are required. These health plans have to do the exact same thing. And it's very frustrating to know that there's so many denials. 18% is a pretty big number for some of these that you're listing here as decreases, inpatient visits and all this funding and stuff, Medicaid. I don't know, it's frustrating to look at those numbers, because they also through 2016 and 2020, which a lot's changed in the last 2 years.
Right. So just so I'm clear about what you're saying, so these decreases would be overall. So clients that have been participating in Community Connections and that we have a contract with the Medicaid health plan, Community Connections is helping that health plan decrease that money.
Correct. I was pointing out a side thing that's that's part of that. But even though I'm not taking away from Community Connections and what they do, providing so many
just
array
in
of
general,
things,
yeah.
Those people are still, even though they're getting pointed in the right direction, those statistics have gone up. They haven't gotten better. That's what I'm trying to say is even though we're doing more, once we do connect them to those departments and those programs that health plans pay for, there's just so many other reasons why my point is you might give them that they're getting denied, even though we get them in the right direction. There's a high percentage of denials, even though we put them in the right direction. That's my point.
Mr. Rubin.
Yeah, on Dr. Meyerson's report, I was just wondering, we had a lot of rabies in Antrim County. Do you know why, or is there one specific problem area, or just curious on the backstory of that?
Well, when you look at that, if you look at rabies animal, that was actually one of the animals who tested positive for rabies. The rabies potential exposure reports people who have animal site exposure, and some of that can be based on animal control officers and federal city folks who have some rabies. And you know what? Some months you get more from one county, and some months you get more from the other. And in general, something that's an issue of health.
And then I've had people ask, and we heard it again tonight, people that are concerned about myocarditis and heart disease and stroke and heart attack. Is there a way we could get, I mean, when I'm asked these questions, I don't have any data in front of me. So it would be nice, you know, on this bottom line here, if you could just put myocarditis in Antrim County or Health Department Northwest or number of heart attacks seen in 2020, 2021, 2022. You know what I mean? Just, I don't have data in front of me, and I like to see data. I mean, I had somebody that wanted to know, well, do cows have heart attacks? Yeah, they do. Well, how many do they have? Well, we've had about one a year for the last 4 years. Well, why do cows have heart attacks? Well, all the cows that had heart attacks the last 4 years, they were all extremely overweight. Well, what are you doing about it? Well, we're trying to feed them a reduced calorie intake so that they aren't so fat. You know, it's just,
get out to pasture.
If you don't have the data, it's hard to make any decisions.
Right. Jairus, I think you had asked me, that was a while back, and I think I responded. I did get some data for you. You'd requested about data related to myocarditis in our counties. And I think, I wish I had the abilities maybe that some of you think I can. Myocarditis or heart attacks, those are data that gets entered through hospital systems and is not something I can easily obtain. They don't call me and say, oh, we had 2 heart attacks in Charlevoix last week. I don't get that data. Communicable disease data is reportable to the local health department. So that's why I have that data because it comes through me. That sort of data does get recorded and there are databases through large healthcare systems, and the state keeps vital statistics. So I can get that, but it's not real easy to get. So when you had asked me about getting some data for, I think it was basically males in a certain age group, I sent that to the, regional epidemiologist, who then there's a cardiovascular epidemiologist at the state who can access some of the hospital systems databases that I can't do that. I can't go in to the hospital and start looking at people's records. I can't do that. I am not able to do that, but they have ways where it's, through databases where the names and everything are removed, and they can get that. And I did get some reports. I think I shared that with you. And part of the problem is we're small from a population. So if you have 32 cases in 1 million or something, you might see 1, you might see none, you might see 2 in a county. And it's really hard you don't get a lot of statistical power on that. So particularly to the questions that you pose, we do know that myocarditis is a risk from the COVID vaccines, especially in young males. And that's for a lot of different reasons, mostly that young males are at higher risk of myocarditis from all causes. So we do see that. When I did look at data from what I could access, some of the counties actually had, less myocarditis reported in 2021 when we were vaccinating than in 2020. Does that mean, what does that mean? Well, when you're talking about 0 or 1 or 2 or 6 or 3, you can't really interpret it. So it's not very interpretable. The other thing is if there's 0 cases, they'll tell me there were 0. And if there were 6 or more, they'll say there were 6 or 7. But if there's 1 to 5, they just say, well, that's too little. And because it would be too easy to perhaps identify those people, they won't release those numbers, and they'll just say, well, it's somewhere between 1 and 5. So the end of that whole story is it's hard to really look at the data in our local thing, but we do have sources for good data. And to me, I think, that question about risk benefit of being vaccinated and taking that risk of myocarditis, you have to compare it to what if you don't get vaccinated. And unfortunately, we all, if you haven't had COVID, you're going to get COVID. I think most of us, even if we don't know it, have been infected. And so you have to compare what is the risk if I get vaccinated versus if I don't get vaccinated. And obviously what we'd all want is our child to never get sick and not have any risk whatsoever. And, but we can't keep them in a bubble forever. And, they're going to be out there. And so we're going to let them drive a car, but we're going to, make them wear their seatbelt, and we're going to have safer cars, and we're going to have safer roads. And I look at that the same way with vaccines. When you look at the risk of myocarditis from COVID, in all age groups, males, females, any gender, however you mix it, the risk is higher from the infection than it is from the vaccine. So I think, and our one public speaker, they talked about the risk of COVID from the vaccine, but they didn't compare that. What's the risk of myocarditis from the vaccine? What's the risk of myocarditis from getting COVID? And the rate is much higher. So we have actually seen nationally, they've seen increased rates of myocarditis from viral infections, specifically, the SARS-CoV-2 virus in the last several years. And that data, although it's hard to look at that locally, that data is out there, and there's been good publications now in MMWR looking at hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people from large healthcare systems where you can really get data that has good statistical power to it. So everyone is welcome to their opinion. And in my opinion, that, we have, the data that I can see here and the evidence that I see here is you can lower your risk by getting vaccinated. And that's why I recommend people get it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, especially about low numbers, because just on my farm. So we had one cow with a heart attack last year. Well, this year we had 2. Oh, we had 100% increase in heart attacks. Right. Well, one cow. That's true. But so next year you have 0.
Now, they're all vegetarian cows.
Yeah.
Get them off of dairy.
Any other questions regarding board report or director reports?
Yes. Kathleen. Now, we've got a mindful schools lessons approach to things that's been going on for 2 or 3 years now. What is the reasoning behind it? What is the specific reason for mindfulness?
Our staff in community health are able to work with the schools, and a lot of them work in a lot of the districts that are in our 4 counties. The staff in particular that wrote for this grant saw an opportunity to get trained in mindfulness. And the schools had started to request some additional lessons from her after she had talked to the superintendents and principals in the buildings she was working with. So she wrote for a grant to the Michigan Health Endowment Fund to get funding to take additional trainings to become trained in mindfulness curriculum, and then worked with each of the districts to see where they wanted to implement this program, and also was able to recruit some teachers in those districts as well. So this was a project that came out of requests from parents that she talked to, as well as school teachers and administrators in the district she was in. And then she found funding to continue that work.
So what is the specific reasoning behind this? What causes the need for this? So there's a grant out there, and so we get onto the bandwagon for this. It says the program is non-religious, not intended as a disciplinary tool. It's voluntary, and I question who's encouraging it. At what level is it voluntary, or what level does it transgress into, geez, you really should have this program. These children need this. Looking, it says non-religious, but I see something, I don't even know what the world this is.
Henry, I want to just say something. I knew this would be a red flag. My grandson has experienced it. I've been in it. Essentially, it's quiet time. It's causing kids to put down their electronic devices, sit for a short period of time, and just not talk. At least that's what I have seen in it. It's actually, it's pretty remarkable. When I first went in, I thought this is different, but
okay,
it's pretty simple. Excuse me for interrupting. I just want to say that.
But what are we? Here we're going into something. So what is? We also included chime, glitter jar, and Hoberman sphere as teaching it. What's a Hoberman sphere?
It's like a toy.
It's a plastic ball
Essentially,
that
yeah.
breathes in and out.
Yeah. So,
I'm actually glad that Henry has brought this up because you're right, Charlie. This is a red flag. I did a little research on mindfulness, and the Harvard Gazette in April of 2018 says that mindfulness meditation is rooted in Buddhism.
Well,
so
when
I
said it was a red flag, what I meant was I thought it would get people's attention. If you experience it, it's not religious. It's not close to religious. It's allowing children to be quiet for a few sections so their brains can calm down. That's all it is.
Okay, here's what I see with this. So these kids, this becomes casual to them eventually. And you're mentioning Buddhism, and somebody mentioned
It's got
that
nothing.
earlier.
Don't go down that path.
Well,
don't go down the religious path.
Well, okay, wait a minute. We're not going to talk over each other, gentlemen.
But what you're doing,
Mr. Mason is represented, right, or is recognized right now.
you're introducing things that become rather casual. So we're not supposed to mention religion, but typically things like this lead in a direction away from what has been the tradition of this country for 2 centuries. And we're seeing more and more of this. And the more of these things brought in, the less foundation children have to build from. The tree that has no root. We're wandering into areas, can't speak religion, but we're wandering into areas far beyond what has been the traditional family norm. And I'm concerned these things are, do we really need mindfulness? I understand kids are pretty agitated. I guess they've probably been that way for centuries. And there was another thing I'd like to ask. Oh, yes. Also, it's being used as a tool that the teachers, partly inspired by our program in the dedication and interest of one of their teachers, the Atlanta School District has begun offering mindfulness to middle school students. What I'm seeing here, somewhere here, it mentions giving teachers lessons for free, educating them in this to be used by them. But individuals of the public would have to pay for this. The teachers being educated in this, should that not be their investment? Whereas the public itself has to pay to have this investment.
that's what was written into the grant. That's what the grant covered, was specifically for the schools, not for the community.
Thank you.
Mr. Marcus, you had a question.
So my number one big issue is there's so many programs that take away from the very precious minutes of education that we're supposed to be giving our kids in the classroom, as the math, reading, which we're failing miserably across the entire nation, because we keep on taking away those important times to do these type of programs. I was fortunate enough, I actually paid a lot of money to have something like this. I learned this, I went to an acting school in Los Angeles, and this is a form of method acting where they touch into, you do a lot of meditation style work. So I see a value in it, no doubt about it, but I don't think it has a place in the schools. I don't think we should be using our tax dollars to do it. And by the way, was it part of the curriculum the parents saw before they sent their kids to school at the beginning of the year? Or is it something that just showed up later on? Again, parents have a right to know what's being taught, when it's going to be taught, what time period of the school year it's going to be taught, and have a say in it. So my biggest issue is not so much what it is, it's just another program that it should not be involved in schools. We should be a catch net, something to back up for kids if there's something going wrong, and not to implement programs and teachers and more stuff. And let the kids learn and get good at math and reading and everything else and history. Stop doing these extra programs because they're getting ridiculous.
Mr. Coombs.
I think this is a discussion that would be more appropriate at a school board.
A lot of them don't even know about it.
Well, so.
But it's our health department that is providing this.
The program, what's going on in schools, that's up to the school board. They determine curriculum. And if you have a concern about the curriculum and with the school, you should take that to the school board.
Mr. Hankins.
This is being offered by the health department as something that can be grant funded, that can be provided to schools. Some schools are choosing to use it. And I really think that if you have a problem with something that's in your local school, you need to take that up.
Mr. Hankins.
Mr. Mason.
The reason I bring it up is because it's right before the health board with this issue. I think it's justified.
You can bring it up, but the school board is going to the one that determines the curriculum, not right. And whether you how we teach math or whatever, that's not something for this board really should be concerned about. That's up to the school board. And so our health department is offering this. It's not mandated to anybody. It's offering it to schools that choose to have it, and the school boards make the decision on whether they have it.
Okay, I have a couple of questions if I can, and then I'll be happy to recognize you. Who authorized this program, Kathleen?
Can you be more specific in your question? What do you mean who authorized
this program to be presented by the health department to schools?
It was
to do so.
It was the director of community health. I don't remember honestly if it was me or the person before me, because I worked on the grant with Lynn, is the person that ran it.
Okay, how much is the grant for?
I did not look up those details before the meeting. Normally they're $100,000 over 2 or 3 years.
Okay. Typically, we do have a program and evaluation committee that oversees the programs. Was this presented to the program and evaluation committee or to the Board of Health?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I have a huge problem with this.
Scott?
Sir.
If you at a county meeting asked the community for a moment of silence, that would take 30 seconds. Mindfulness is just an extension. It is not a lot different. It is not a program. It is not a half an hour. It's asking children to spend a few minutes, few seconds, and just be quiet. If a teacher says to the students, please be quiet, would you object to that? No, of course not. It is not a religion. It is a way of calming. When Henry talked about kids with phones and not phones, this is a moment to put down the phone. This is a moment to just be quiet. You're overthinking it, overstating it, overreacting, exaggerating, and it's a waste of time.
Well, I couldn't disagree with you more, Charlie. There's a reason that we have a kit that's provided. It is not just asking students to be quiet. There is a chime and a glitter jar and Hoberman spear that's provided to these schools. So there is more to it than just asking students to be quiet. There's a meditation element to this.
Okay.
And that goes back to my initial statement about this being rooted in Buddhism. That's a quote from the Harvard Gazette, April 17th, 2018.
What's the Harvard Gazette?
It's a magazine that when I
Never heard
typed
of it.
in,
Never heard of
when
it.
I typed in mindfulness meditation, that's what came up.
Who is it? Where does it come from? Who writes it?
The Harvard Gazette.
Who's the Harvard Gazette?
It's a
Never heard of it.
publication. I'm sorry you haven't heard of it, Charlie, but it's a publication. They can
Who wrote
Google it. Google mindfulness.
Well,
you get a whole list of things that come up.
If I don't get my medical advice from Google.
Interrupted. It's your floor. You're going to give somebody else a chance to speak.
Mr. Rubing had his hand up just a moment ago. Go ahead, Jairus.
The question you asked about grants and who approves or doesn't approve, I believe that technically the education committee, what's the name again? I keep
program and evaluation.
Program and
committee.
evaluation. Technically, I think we are supposed to, but I don't believe the health department program and evaluation committee has in the recent past. Can somebody enlighten me on that?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I'm not aware that the program and evaluation committee has, we have 60 different programs that operate, and but the staff reports when we come to the Board of Health inform the Board of Health about what's going on with those programs. We don't, in our past practice, have not called the Program and Evaluation Committee to, I guess, approve or disapprove what programs that we do or don't do. We have staff that work in our programs like community health that, we have several grants that our staff are, spread out across, in a lot of different fashions. So.
And I guess the reason I bring that up, to step back from this a minute, I had a lot of negative feedback just over a year ago in my county about a $100,000 grant that the health department did in Mansalona to give free needles and syringes to people. And during that whole year, they served like 6 people. And I had people that brought the argument to me, and I kind of thought that it was somewhat sympathetic. So we're giving them free needles and syringes to get their high, and then they can go out in their car and drive it down the road and crash into my wife who's driving home from work. And we just, instead of trying to get them off of this, we need to be careful of what grants we approve and don't approve. And this is here and this is now. And Charlie talks about a moment of silence, but the core values of mindfulness are, if you look it up, the core values are a radical tool for community change, and they actively practice anti-racism.
Who says that?
That's their website.
Whose website?
Mindfulness, their core values.
Who's the mindfulness website? I'd never heard of it.
I can email it to you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Definitely don't want to be anti-racist.
No, there's a program that's being administered by the health department to local schools.
My pillow back, weigh in on his opinion. We're kind of getting off on the side here.
Mr. Marcus.
So this was done, this is funded 100% by grant, right? And that grant is, when is the expiration and new grant start the application process?
I mean, for this program, it ends at the end of the school year and it's not intended to continue.
I'd like to make a motion that that we do not allow the application process to be part of this program to the permit for the grant to take place in next 2023.
It's not on the agenda for tonight.
Anything that's given to us in a form of discussion is on the agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second.
What's the motion?
The motion was to not allow for the grant application to take place for this program for 2023.
I'd like to see that motion in writing before we vote on it. I have no idea what I'm voting on. I would propose that you write the motion before we vote on it.
Sure.
We're just wasting
You'll have it in
time.
your hands and absolutely.
We're wasting time. You made a motion. You heard it. I heard it. I think everybody heard it. I think we all.
I didn't understand.
I think it's appropriate for the motion to be documented so that we can clearly state it and then vote.
The motion isn't part of the agenda. The staff hasn't had a chance to weigh in. This is just a motion out of the clear blue. I would propose that if you want to make a motion, draft it, have staff look at it, present it at the next meeting, which I won't be at.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Again, this has been approved, not coming to the board in the past. And it would be good to have the board's approval. Protect itself in the future, something like this.
Then maybe you need to have a policy somewhere in that could be go through one of our committees to form a policy.
Well, we do have a program and evaluation committee that I think in our bylaws states is to approve programs that are presented by the health department. And this program was not presented to that committee for.
Programs have not been presented to the committee.
That's a great question.
So if that's what you're concerned going forward, And when you have the program and evaluation committee, you need to have a policy for programs and evaluation. And you don't just start with this one because somebody thinks that it's whatever they think it is. So if you're going to do it, you have to do it in a way that is consistent, under legal review, some sort of
Write that down on paper as a motion. I'd like to see it in writing.
application.
Mr. Mason.
Robert's rules allows for this kind of motion to be made. And he's writing out his motion. And something like this needs to start somewhere, or we can allow just anything to run into the schools. And we could be a long time getting to that point.
It's really not your place to determine what happens. It's really up to the local school.
Well, it is when the health department is in charge of it.
The health department is offering something and local schools are accepting it if they want to or not. And it's not your place to decide whether they accept it or not.
Well, I think it's the health department's Board of Health's position that we get to approve which programs are offered to those local schools.
I think it would be useful if the person making the motion give us a detailed description of what this mindfulness program is that he wants us to end. In A to Z, soup to nuts. What is it that he wants us to end? Because I don't know what we're ending, other than it doesn't like something called mindfulness.
We don't have time to research that right now.
Perfect. Let's just go ahead and make a motion. We'll research it later.
You're allowing your own fears and prejudices to guide us on this. And it's not, you need to take a deep breath. You need a little more.
There's one thing I'll get a chance to read it, so I hope you just read it and pass it on.
Okay.
Could the person that's making the motion read it out loud?
Motion for the Northwest DH. What's the Northwest DH?
Northwest Department of Health. Be quick, quickly right.
Not apply for Michigan Health Endowment Fund for the purpose of a 2-year Mindful Schools Project 2023 application year. Is that the correct name of the program?
It's called the Mindful Schools Project. If it changes name, it's up to the new board to catch it.
Well, I'd like the motion to be accurate.
And it should be read out loud by the person making
It will be. We're giving everybody the opportunity to review it right now. I'll read it into the minutes. I'll read it on Mr. Mason. You don't review it also.
Read it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So the motion made by Commissioner Marcus is as follows. Motion that the Health Department of Northwest Michigan not apply.
NWDH, that's what it says. Read it the way it's written.
It was amended.
I was writing it so
It was
that
amended.
to save don't be childish. Okay.
Okay.
You're
All
not a
right.
child.
All right, gentlemen, hold on. Let's read the motion. Let's have a vote. We can move on from there. Motion for the Health Department of Northwest Michigan to not apply for the Michigan Health Endowment Fund for the purpose of a 2-year Mindful Schools project in the 2023 application year. That's the motion that was made by Mr. Marcus. Is there a second?
Yes.
Henry,
Seconded by Mr. Mason.
Chairman.
Sir.
So the motion is a yes to deny the moving forward with 2023. Right now.
Yeah, this year.
Correct.
ends, she says then for
Correct.
this
If you
school
vote yes, that would be for us to not allow that application to be completed
year. In other
again.
words, it's already in motion for the school year.
Yes, correct.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Ms. Roloff?
We've got something before us, and I think we all should really take a listen. I didn't know anything about it. I know the health department does really good work and all that, but I think it's time all of us up here sitting on this board, open our eyes, think about what's happening in the future for our kids, and then vote your conscience.
Any further discussion?
I think we should be
Mr.
a little more
Marcus.
informed before we have this vote. And if we
One
have this
thing I
vote
learned
now-
when I
That's what I meant to
took.
say.
Okay,
He gave me the time.
hold on. Mr. Marcus is recognized right now.
I
Mr.
made
Coates, I'll
it
get to
clear
you.
that my objection was taking away from the importance of the other, the core teaching of kids. I made that clear right away, that we need to stop these extra little activities that do that. But from coming from somebody who went to an acting school and took classes on this very same thing, and the meditation, a lot of it is the language being used to put you in that in that sense of relaxation. There is a form of language that they use to do so. Those languages haven't been spelled out and how they get from point A to point B. And with my experience and how we've done it, there's lots of ways to get somebody in a relaxed state that we don't know the actual process. So there's a process issue that I'm not too excited about because I don't know it. And not knowing it is enough for me to have a little concern about it.
Can I respond to that, please?
1 minute. And then the whole process, this is actually used. You ever heard of Carter kits?
What are you talking about?
Have you heard of Carter kits? Carter kits is something emergency services personnel use for young children when there's a major crisis. It's a sensory thing that keeps their mind off of what's going on. It calms them. It's usually squishy toys or something that they give them the kids during a very stressful time period. They're called Carter kits. We gave like 2,500 out this year at North Mental Health or North Country this year. Did an amazing program for it. But the process of the sensory part of it, what's that?
That sounds like witchcraft.
Carter kits.
I don't know that.
Carter kits are for the sensory of a specific age group. They even got teens in here too. So there's an age group that's pretty broad. And there's no one teaching the Carter kits. There's not somebody instructing them how to use it. All right. It usually is a warm blanket too, by the way.
Are you advocating for Carter kits?
Mr.
Are you advocating for Carter kits?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Coons, you had a
Because I
comment.
actually know what it's for. This one, you have teachers talking about creating closer relationship with students. How about encourage them to have closer relationships with mom and dad? I mean, I just think it's just,
So if you ever want a kid to learn anything, you have to develop a relationship.
they need to learn math, reading, what schools are supposed to teach, not all these other programs that they keep on adding every time I turn around.
You know, like vocational
If you want
programs or
kids to
football
learn,
or.
you have to have. a
Football, yeah,
relationship.
that's not necessary
Okay,
technically.
okay. I'm going to call the question. We have a motion and a second. Jennifer, call the roll, please.
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
This is the dumbest motion I've seen from this board. It's an embarrassment and I vote no.
Kuntz,
I'm once again embarrassed and ashamed to be a part of this body. And I vote absolutely no. I have no respect for what you're doing and the way you've done it.
Pallarito,
Yes.
Mason,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you.
So what are you gonna do with the motion now?
I'm not sure what your question is.
What happens? What's next?
I think we've given direction that program not be reinstituted or that the grants not be reapplied for.
Right. Of course, you know, a future board can't be bound to what this board says, so a future board could rescind that, and, you know, at some point it's that. Just move on.
The future board could.
But if it wanted to.
Okay, do we have any further questions for any of the department directors? Hearing none, committee reports. Personnel and Finance Committee accounts payable.
I make a motion, the Finance Committee met and recommends approval of November bills in the amount of $607,866 and $816.66, and the November employee expenses of $22,077.77.
We have a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Pallarito. Any further discussion? Jennifer, roll call, please.
Pallarito,
Yes.
Mason,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes.
Yep.
Kuntz.
Yeah.
Program and Evaluation Committee has not met, and we are pending the appointment of new board members before we resume those meetings. Is that correct, Mr. Rubing?
Yes.
Thank you. Public comment again. Please state your name and where you reside.
My name's Pat Freilich and I'm from Emmett County. And I'm amazed a director asked to speak to this board and was before the vote and was totally not acknowledged. A decision was made based on people Googling information. An option in the future could be to ask one of the community mental health or the mental health providers to come in and explain the program to the board so that an informed decision could actually be made instead of an impulse decision. I have to agree and thank my two commissioners for Emmett County for their stance on this. It's absolutely ridiculous not to ask the schools who are participating what they would like. Obviously, they chose to participate, or the people working with the children. Children have a lot of issues in classrooms these days. It would be wonderful if you could put them in their seats and just have them do exactly what you want them to do, but that's not the way it works. So I am so disappointed in this board for taking uninformed actions. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to address the board?
Am I allowed to come back? I'm Mary Martinchuk from Emmett County. I agree with everything that Pat Freilich just said. I am so disgusted with the decision that was just made here. Kathleen asked you if she could speak and you didn't even recognize a director? I am absolutely appalled at what happened here today. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board? Hearing no further public comment, commissioners update. Item number 13. Mr. Mason.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Pallarito.
Nothing today, sir.
Mr. Marcus.
Nothing.
Mr. Rubing.
Yeah, a couple things. I have a constituent that gave me a letter that they received from the health department. And it says, a complaint was received by the health department regarding an accumulation of garbage at the above referenced residence. A representative of the health department conducted an investigation on this date and found an accumulation of garbage. Please be advised that the accumulation of garbage violates Article 8, garbage and rubbish sections 8.2 to 8.4. Dan, can you give me any, is this something that happens from time to time, or
Could we maybe do this separately from the meeting tonight? That's an issue in your own county there, and you've got a staff issue. Can we just move forward?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I appreciate what I just like to get it over with.
Yep. The second thing I had was each of our counties is going to be getting some opioid money to hopefully decrease addictions. the Michigan Association of Counties has hired someone to look at what the counties are getting and how that's going. And I was just wondering if we have anyone from the health department that's following that, and if so, how that's, if the commissioners need to know anything about that, or if you're going to inform us when we do need to know something about that.
Yeah, Kathleen actually would be able to speak to that mostly, but her and her team have been watching that closely. And, you know, it's a little sum of money over several years, over the 18 years. But we have asked each board of commission in each county, and I know you have done as well, as that on behalf of the health department, that we would receive some of that funding, given that, you know, we do a lot of that work that is outlined in that proposal for that funding to be used for. We are watching that. Yes.
Okay. And then I don't know what the procedure is, but Scott, you had emailed a copy out to us of the contract for Dan.
For review, yes.
Yes. And a couple people didn't get a chance to review it. Is that something that would be appropriate in the future to ask for a hard copy at our desk when we get here? I didn't print mine. I got it. I read it. And then Charlie asked me what page I was on, and I didn't know because I just made a mental note. And
yeah, sure. Yeah, we can make that happen for certain.
Thank you.
Mr. Coons.
I'm extremely grateful to the health department staff for the work they do. I'm very sorry for the way that the staff was treated at this meeting tonight. Just want to say once again, deeply, deeply ashamed.
Mr. McKinnis.
I thought I'd have about a 30-second mindfulness moment of silence tonight, but I don't want to engage in some sort of Eastern religion. So nothing else.
Thank you, Ms. Roloff.
Boy, I got a lot to say, but I don't want to say everything I'm thinking. But I do want to thank the health department for all their work that they do. I look back in the audience and I see some familiar faces for a long time ago. They've been with me all this way, and I see all the new ones out there, and we have a new board. Anyway, it's been a pleasure being up here all this time with you, everyone. And I even got used to the new commissioners up here on this board. When we started out, it was like, wasn't really sure about you guys. And I really wasn't. Frankly, I wasn't sure about you. But we've all come to know each other, and I think we kind of like each other now. So anyway, I want to thank everybody. It has been a pleasure. I've all these years sitting up here, and tonight is the first time ever that I've been before kind of meeting like this. You know, and I'm not thankful for that, but I am thankful for everybody that turned out, and I'm thankful for all you guys, whether we all agree or not. We can walk out that door and say we agree. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shirley. The only thing that I would add is I appreciate the service of each member of the Board of Health. As Dan said in his report, that it is not an easy assignment, and your willingness to serve on your county commissions and on this board is very much appreciated. So I will take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. McKinnis. We are adjourned.
Oh.